This morning at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police held what they called their final briefing on a case that has haunted Nova Scotia for months. What they revealed in that sterile conference room would shatter the illusion of safety that had protected one small maritime community for generations. Pause for emphasis. I am your host, and what you are about to witness is not just another missing persons case. This is the story of how evil can wear the most trusted face in your neighborhood, how a monster can hide behind a friendly smile and a spotless reputation, how two innocent children, 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack, became victims of a betrayal so profound that it would forever change how an entire town sleeps at night. But before we go any further, let me ask you something that will hit close to home. Have you ever looked at the person who fixes your plumbing, repairs your roof, or maintains your yard and thought, what do I really know about them? Have you ever felt that sudden chill when you realize that the person you have welcomed into your home, the person your children have seen countless times, might not be who they appear to be? Because if you have ever experienced that moment of doubt, that flash of concern about someone you thought you could trust completely, then you understand exactly how the residents of Stellarton, Nova Scotia are feeling right this very moment. Voice drops to more serious tone. Every parent watching this knows the nightmare. You turn around for just a moment, and your child is gone. You call their name once, twice, then panic sets in. Your heart pounds as you search every room, every closet, every possible hiding spot. But what happens when the search ends, and your children are simply gone? What happens when the friendly contractor who has been in your home, who has smiled at your children, who has earned your complete trust, becomes the face of your worst fears? The residents of Stellarton thought they knew everyone in their tight-knit community of just over 4,000 people. They thought they understood the rhythms of their quiet streets, the faces behind every business, the stories of every family. They believed that in a place where everyone knows everyone else, nothing truly terrible could happen without someone noticing, someone speaking up, someone stepping in to help. They were wrong. What you are about to discover will change how you see your own neighborhood. It will make you question that friendly wave from the contractor across the street. It will make you wonder about the background of every service provider who enters your home. Because the truth about what happened to 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan is darker than anyone in their community could have imagined. This is not just a story about two missing children. This is a story about how a predator can operate in plain sight for years, building trust, establishing credibility, and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. This is about how sophisticated criminal networks can flourish in the shadows of the most innocent communities. And this is about how the very people we depend on to keep us safe can sometimes be the ones we should fear the most. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have just concluded one of the most complex investigations in maritime history. Advanced forensic techniques, hundreds of interviews, and months of painstaking detective work have finally revealed the horrifying truth. But the cost of that truth has been paid by a family that will never be whole again, and a community that will never feel completely safe again. This is the kind of case that changes everything we thought we knew about safety in small communities. If you are new here, this channel dives deep into the cases that matter, the investigations that reveal uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell, because this story will stay with you long after the final details are revealed. The clock is ticking. The truth is finally emerging, and what the Royal Canadian Mounted Police discovered about the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan will make you understand that sometimes the greatest dangers come from the most unexpected places. This is their story. This is Stellarton's nightmare, and this investigation has only just begun to reveal the full scope of a horror that was hiding in plain sight. Stellarton sits in the heart of Pictou County, Nova Scotia, like a living postcard of maritime Canada. With a population of 4,097 residents, this former coal mining town stretches along the banks of the East River, where generations of families have built their lives around shared values of hard work, mutual support, and unwavering trust in their neighbors. The town's main street runs straight through its center, lined with century-old brick buildings that house Morrison's Hardware, the Stellarton Pharmasave, and Tim Hortons, where locals gather every morning at 6:30 to discuss everything from hockey scores to municipal politics. These are not anonymous conversations between strangers. These are exchanges between people who attended the same elementary school, who remember each other's grandparents, who have witnessed each other's children grow up and start families of their own. Ford Street connects the residential neighborhoods where modest 2-story homes sit on quarter-acre lots, their front porches close enough to the sidewalk that neighbors can chat without raising their voices. McGregor Avenue winds through the newer development where young families like the Sullivans chose to settle, drawn by the promise of safe streets where children can ride bicycles without fear and parents can work late without worrying about what might happen in their absence. The town's identity was forged in the coal mines that once employed nearly every able-bodied man in the community. Though the last mine closed in 1992, the culture of mutual dependence remained deeply embedded in daily life. When someone needed help moving furniture, a dozen neighbors would appear with trucks and strong backs. When a family faced financial hardship, the community would quietly organize support through church networks and informal assistance that never required paperwork or official acknowledgement. This tradition of collective care extended to every aspect of community life. The annual Stellarton Homecoming Festival, each August, brought together residents from across the region, featuring live music, local food vendors, and the famous fireworks display that lit up the night sky over Albion Avenue. The Christmas parade down Main Street in December showcased floats built by local businesses, service clubs, and neighborhood groups, with children lined up along the sidewalks in their winter coats, catching candy thrown by volunteers who knew most of them by name. The Stellarton Minor Hockey Association connected families through shared Saturday mornings at the rink, where parents formed friendships that lasted decades while their children learned teamwork and perseverance. The volunteer fire department, staffed entirely by local residents, responded to emergencies with the kind of personal investment that only comes from protecting people you have known your entire life. Employment opportunities centered around a handful of local businesses that had operated for generations. McLeod Construction employed 23 people and had built most of the newer homes in town. Atlantic Plumbing Services, founded in 1978, maintained the infrastructure that kept the community functioning. These companies operated on handshake agreements and personal recommendations, hiring workers based on family connections and community reputation, rather than formal background checks or extensive interviews. The May of 2025 brought unseasonably warm weather to Nova Scotia, with temperatures reaching 22 degrees Celsius by mid-afternoon, and gentle breezes carrying the scent of apple blossoms from the orchards outside town. Spring had arrived early, and residents were already planning their summer gardens and discussing which families would host the traditional neighborhood barbecues that marked the beginning of the outdoor season. Children walked to school along familiar routes, stopping to pet the same dogs they had known since kindergarten, waving to the same shop owners who had watched them grow up. Parents worked their regular shifts at the hospital, the school district, and the local businesses, confident that their children were safe in a community where everyone looked out for everyone else. The rhythm of daily life in Stellarton followed patterns established over decades. Morning coffee at the diner, afternoon visits to the library, evening walks along the quiet streets where porch lights created pools of warm light, and the sound of laughter from backyard gatherings carried on the spring air. This was a place where car doors remained unlocked, where children played outside until dark, where the idea of real danger seemed as distant as the big cities that residents visited, only when absolutely necessary. But beneath this carefully maintained facade of small-town perfection, something had been growing in the shadows. Someone had been watching, planning, and waiting for the perfect opportunity to shatter the trust that held this community together. The very openness that made Stellarton feel like the safest place on earth had also made it the perfect hunting ground for a predator who understood exactly how to exploit the bonds of neighborly trust. The stage was set for a tragedy that would force every resident to question everything they thought they knew about safety, community, and the people they had trusted most. Marianne Sullivan stands at her kitchen window each morning at 6:15, watching the sun rise over the quiet streets of her McGregor Avenue neighborhood while preparing breakfast for her family. At 34 years old, she has become the kind of person every community needs but rarely deserves. Someone who volunteers without being asked, who remembers everyone's birthday, and who organizes help for families in crisis without ever seeking recognition for her efforts. According to neighbors who have known her since she moved to Stellarton 12 years ago, Marianne transforms every space she enters. She coordinates the annual book fair at Stellarton Elementary School, spending her own money to ensure that every child can afford to take home at least one new book. She organizes the community garden behind the United Church, where families grow vegetables together and children learn where their food actually comes from. Marianne is the person you call when you do not know who else to call, says Janet McKenzie, who lives 3 houses down from the Sullivans. When my husband had his heart attack last winter, she showed up at the hospital with homemade soup and stayed with me for 4 hours, just so I would not have to sit alone in that waiting room. Her husband David represents everything that makes small-town tradesmen legendary in their communities. For 15 years, he has built a reputation based on showing up when he promises, finishing work on schedule, and standing behind every project with a personal guarantee that means something. His business, Sullivan Home Improvements, operates out of a converted garage behind their home, where he stores the tools and materials that have helped him renovate half the houses in Stellarton. David's projects read like a history of the town's growth and renewal. He renovated the community center kitchen in 2018, donating his labor so that the building fund could stretch to cover new appliances. He built the code playground equipment at Stellarton Elementary School, working evenings and weekends for 2 months to create something special for the children who would use it for years to come. You shake hands with David Sullivan, and the job gets done right, explains Robert Henderson, who hired David to renovate his basement 3 years ago. He treats your home like it belongs to his own family. When he finished our project, he spent an extra afternoon teaching my teenage son how to use the power tools safely. That is just who David is. Their home on McGregor Avenue reflects the care and attention that David brings to every project. The 2-story colonial sits on a corner lot, painted a warm cream color with forest green shutters that David replaces every 3 years whether they need it or not. The front porch features hand-built railings and flower boxes that Marion fills with petunias and marigolds each spring. The backyard includes a wooden swing set that David constructed when Lilly turned 4, with safety features that exceed any store-bought equipment. 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan approaches life with the kind of boundless energy that exhausts adults and inspires other children. She walks to school each morning with her backpack bouncing and her mind already racing ahead to whatever adventure the day might bring. Her teacher, Miss Rebecca Thompson, describes Lilly as the student who asks the questions that make everyone else think harder. Lilly does not just want to know what happens in the story we are reading. Miss Thompson explains. She wants to know why the characters make the choices they make, and what she would do differently if she were in their situation. She challenges everyone around her to think more deeply about everything. Lily's favorite activity involves creating elaborate art projects that cover the dining room table for days at a time. She draws detailed pictures of her family, their house, and the places she wants to visit when she grows up. Her current masterpiece depicts the entire town of Stellarton from a bird's-eye view, with every building carefully labeled and colored according to her own artistic vision. Her dream involves becoming a veterinarian who specializes in helping injured wildlife. She has already begun practicing by caring for every stray cat in the neighborhood and maintaining detailed notebooks about their health and behavior. Her parents have promised that when she turns 8, they will consider getting a dog that she can train and care for as preparation for her future career. 4-year-old Jack Sullivan balances his sister's exuberance with a quieter strength that draws adults into longer conversations than they expect from such a young child. While Lilly fills rooms with chatter and activity, Jack observes carefully before he speaks, and when he does share his thoughts, people listen with genuine attention. Jack's special gift involves remembering details that others miss, and making connections that surprise everyone around him. He notices when someone is feeling sad before they say anything, and he has a remarkable ability to ask exactly the right question to help them feel better. His favorite activity involves building elaborate structures with wooden blocks, creating architectural marvels that display an intuitive understanding of engineering principles. Jack has this way of making you feel like the most important person in the world when he is talking to you, says his grandmother, Eleanor Sullivan, who visits every Sunday afternoon. He will sit quietly for the longest time, and then he will say something that shows he has been thinking about things much more deeply than anyone realized. The extended Sullivan family includes grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who gather for every holiday and celebration. Sunday dinners at Eleanor and Frank Sullivan's house bring together 3 generations who share stories, play games, and reinforce the bonds that make their family unusually close, even by small-town standards. Their daily routine follows patterns that provide stability and comfort for everyone involved. Breakfast together at 7 o'clock, with Marianne packing lunches while David reviews his schedule for the day. Evening walks through the neighborhood after dinner, with Lilly and Jack pointing out changes to houses and yards they have come to know intimately. This is the family that Stellarton will soon lose. These are the lives that will be shattered by a betrayal so profound that it will force an entire community to question everything they thought they knew about trust, safety, and the people they invited into their homes. Saturday, May 2nd, 2025 begins like countless other weekend mornings in the Sullivan household. At 6:45 a.m., Marion Sullivan opens her eyes to sunlight streaming through the bedroom curtains, the kind of golden light that promises a perfect spring day. The temperature outside has already reached 15 degrees Celsius, and the weather forecast calls for clear skies and temperatures climbing to 24 degrees by late afternoon. David Sullivan starts his morning routine 30 minutes later, moving quietly through the house so he does not wake the children. He makes coffee in the kitchen where Marianne joins him at 7:15, and they spend 20 minutes discussing their plans for the community celebration dinner at the Stellarton Recreation Centre. The event, organized by the local Chamber of Commerce, will honor families who have contributed significantly to community development over the past year. "The kids are so excited about tonight," Marianne tells her husband as she pours orange juice into their favorite glasses. Lilly has been talking about wearing her new dress all week, and Jack wants to bring his wooden truck to show everyone. At 8 o'clock, the sound of small feet running down the stairs announces that Lilly and Jack Sullivan have officially started their day. Lilly appears in the kitchen wearing her pajamas and carrying her newest art project, a detailed drawing of the family attending the evening celebration. Jack follows closely behind, clutching his favorite stuffed elephant and asking whether they can stop at the park before the dinner begins. Breakfast becomes a lively discussion about the day ahead. Lilly wants to know who else will be at the celebration, whether there will be music, and if she can sit at the same table as her friend Emma Mackenzie. Jack focuses on more practical concerns, asking whether the food will include anything he actually wants to eat, and whether he can bring a book in case the grown-up speeches become too long. The morning flows into early afternoon activities that define weekend family life in small-town Nova Scotia. David works in his garage workshop, organizing tools and materials for next week's projects while the children play in the backyard. Marianne spends time in her garden, planting tomato seedlings, while Lilly helps by carefully carrying each small plant from the porch to its designated spot. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the family begins preparing for the evening celebration. Lilly takes a bath and spends 45 minutes choosing between two dresses before settling on the blue one with small white flowers that her grandmother bought for her birthday. Jack allows his mother to help him with his clothes, but insists on tying his own shoes, a skill he has recently mastered and takes great pride in demonstrating. The drive to the recreation center at 5:30 p.m. captures the family in a moment of pure contentment. David drives slowly through their neighborhood, pointing out houses where he has completed recent projects. Marianne reviews the evening's schedule while Lilly and Jack chatter excitedly in the back seat about seeing their friends and meeting new people. "Look, there's Mr. Henderson's house where Daddy fixed the basement," Lilly announces, pressing her face against the car window. "And there's the yellow house where Daddy built the new deck last summer." Jack contributes his own observations about the neighborhood, noting which houses have dogs, which families have children close to his age, and which yards feature the most interesting gardens. His detailed memory for these small facts makes his parents smile and shake their heads in amazement. The Stellarton Recreation Centre buzzes with activity when the Sullivan family arrives at 5:45 p.m. Nearly 200 community members have gathered to celebrate local achievements and strengthen the bonds that hold their town together. Children run between tables while adults catch up on news and share stories about recent developments in their lives. The Sullivan family sits at table 12 with the Mackenzie family, the Hendersons, and two other families who have become close friends through school activities and neighborhood connections. Lilly immediately begins animated conversations with Emma Mackenzie about their upcoming school project, while Jack quietly observes the room and occasionally whispers observations to his father. Dinner service begins at 6:30 p.m. with a menu of roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, and dinner rolls prepared by volunteers from the United Church. The children receive special attention from the servers, who know most of them by name and remember their food preferences from previous community events. During the recognition ceremony that begins at 7:15 p.m., David Sullivan receives acknowledgement for his volunteer work on community improvement projects. The applause that follows his introduction comes from people who have benefited directly from his generous contribution of time and skill to projects that benefit everyone. "David Sullivan represents the best of what makes our community strong," announces Mayor Patricia Williams as David stands briefly to acknowledge the recognition. "He gives his time and talent freely, and our town is better because of his commitment to helping his neighbors." Lilly claps enthusiastically for her father, while Jack watches with the serious expression he reserves for important moments. Both children understand that their father has done something special, even if they do not fully comprehend the significance of volunteer community service. The evening concludes with informal socializing that continues until 8:15 p.m. Families gather in small groups, Children play games organized by older teenagers, and the warm spring air draws people outside to continue conversations under the lights that illuminate the recreation center parking lot. The Sullivan family begins their journey home at 8:25 p.m. The drive through their familiar neighborhood takes 12 minutes, with Lily and Jack sharing their favorite moments from the evening while their parents discuss how successful the event has been for bringing the community together. They arrive at their McGregor Avenue home at 8:37 p.m. The porch light welcomes them back to the house where they have built their life together, where their children have grown and thrived, where they have created memories that will sustain them through whatever challenges life might bring. None of them knows this will be the last normal evening the Sullivan family will ever have. The spring air carries the scent of apple blossoms and fresh grass. The neighborhood settles into its peaceful Saturday night rhythm. Children prepare for bed in houses throughout Stellarton, and parents relax after a day spent strengthening the community bonds that make their town feel like the safest place on earth. But in less than 2 hours, everything will change forever. 8:37 p.m. The Sullivan family walks through their front door on McGregor Avenue, carrying the warmth of community celebration into their familiar home. The porch light illuminates their faces as David fumbles with the keys while Lily and Jack chatter about their favorite moments from the evening. "I want to draw a picture of the whole dinner for Grandma Eleanor," Lily announces as they step into the front hallway. "She will want to see everyone who was there and what they were wearing." Jack clutches his stuffed elephant closer and asks whether he can stay up a few extra minutes to build one more tower with his wooden blocks. The evening has energized him in a way that makes bedtime seem less appealing than usual. Marianne hangs her jacket in the front closet, while David checks the mail that has accumulated on the kitchen counter. The house feels exactly as they left it, comfortable, secure, and filled with the artifacts of a family life built on routine and mutual care. 9:00 p.m. arrives with the familiar rhythm of weekend bedtime preparation. Marian guides both children upstairs to their bedrooms, reminding them to brush their teeth thoroughly and choose the clothes they want to wear to church tomorrow morning. The bathroom fills with the sounds of running water, giggling, and the gentle negotiations that mark the end of every day. 15 more minutes, then lights out. Marianne calls from the hallway as she sorts through the laundry basket outside Lily's bedroom door. "Tomorrow is Sunday, which means breakfast with Grandma and Grandpa Sullivan, so we need to get plenty of rest." David remains downstairs, reviewing paperwork for Monday morning appointments and organizing his tools for the projects scheduled to begin next week. The television plays quietly in the background, showing highlights from hockey games that hold his attention only intermittently. 9:30 p.m. Marianne finishes folding the last towel and walks toward the children's bedrooms to check on their progress. "Lily, Jack, time for bed," she calls out in the voice that usually prompts immediate compliance from both children. Silence. She walks to Lily's bedroom first, expecting to find her daughter lost in a book or adding final touches to one of her art projects. The room is empty. The bed remains unmade from this morning, and the dress Lily chose not to wear lies draped across her desk chair, exactly where she left it this afternoon. "Jack," Marian moves across the hallway to her son's smaller bedroom, where his wooden blocks usually cover most of the floor space. This room is also empty. His stuffed elephant sits alone on the bed, abandoned in a way that seems completely inconsistent with Jack's usual behavior. 9:45 p.m. "David," Marian calls downstairs, her voice carrying a note of confusion rather than concern. "Are the kids down there with you?" David looks up from his paperwork, immediately alert to the change in his wife's tone. "No. They went upstairs with you 30 minutes ago. Are they not in their rooms?" The house suddenly feels different. The comfortable silence that typically settles over their home in the evening now carries an weight that neither parent can immediately identify. David climbs the stairs 2 at a time, joining Marianne in a more thorough search of the upstairs bedrooms, bathroom, and closets. 10:00 p.m. Panic begins its slow crawl up Marianne's spine as she calls their children's names with increasing urgency. "Lily, Jack, this is not funny anymore. Come out right now." David searches the basement, the garage, and every room on the first floor. He checks behind furniture, inside closets, and in every possible hiding spot that might appeal to children playing an elaborate game of hide and seek. The house reveals nothing. "Maybe they went outside," David suggests, though neither child has ever left the house after bedtime without permission. "You know how excited they were about the evening. Maybe they wanted to play in the backyard for a few more minutes." 10:15 p.m. The first call goes to Janet Mackenzie, their neighbor 3 houses down. whose own children sometimes play with Lily and Jack during weekend afternoons. Janet, this is Marianne Sullivan. I know it is late, but did you happen to see Lily and Jack in your yard tonight? They seem to have disappeared from the house. Janet's immediate concern comes through clearly in her voice. No, Marianne, I have not seen them since we were all at the recreation center. Have you checked with the Hendersons? Maybe they walked over there to continue playing with Tommy. 10:30 p.m. The house-to-house search begins with David and Marianne knocking on doors throughout their neighborhood, asking the same desperate questions of neighbors who respond with increasing alarm. Robert Henderson, Patricia Walsh, the Murphy family, the Camerons. None of them have seen Lily and Jack since the community celebration ended. We need to check the park, suggests Tom Murphy, grabbing a flashlight from his garage. Kids sometimes think of adventures that adults would never consider. By 10:45 p.m., 8 neighbors have joined the search, walking through Stellarton's quiet streets calling the children's names, while flashlight beams sweep across yards, parks, and the dark spaces between houses where children might hide or become lost. 11 o'clock p.m. Marianne Sullivan dials 911 with trembling fingers, while David continues searching their own house for the third time, desperate to find some clue they might have missed. 911 Emergency Services. What is your emergency? My children are missing, Marianne says, and her voice breaks on the word missing. My 6-year-old daughter Lily and my 4-year-old son Jack. We came home from a community dinner at 8:30 tonight, sent them upstairs to get ready for bed at 9 o'clock, and when I went to check on them at 9:30, they were gone. We have searched everywhere. Our neighbors are helping us look, but we cannot find them anywhere. The dispatcher's trained calm provides little comfort as she begins asking the questions that transform a family emergency into an official police investigation. Mrs. Sullivan, I am dispatching officers to your location immediately. Can you confirm your address and give me detailed descriptions of both children? None of them knows that this call will launch one of the most complex investigations in maritime history. None of them understands that the comfortable world of Stellarton is about to be forever changed by the truth they will eventually discover. As a parent, or someone who loves children, how do you even begin to process this moment? Let me know in the comments if you have ever experienced that gut-wrenching realization that something is terribly wrong. The clock keeps ticking, the search continues, and somewhere in the darkness, 2 innocent children face whatever horror has taken them from the safety of their home. At 11:47 p.m. on Saturday, May 2nd, 2025, the first Royal Canadian Mounted Police Cruiser arrives at the Sullivan residence on McGregor Avenue. Within minutes, the quiet residential street transforms into the focal point of what will become one of the most comprehensive missing persons investigations in maritime history. Corporal Guillaume Tremblay, of the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team, receives the call at his home in Halifax at 12:15 a.m. With 22 years of experience investigating complex cases across Nova Scotia, Tremblay has built a reputation for methodical precision and unwavering dedication to finding answers when children disappear without explanation. Every missing child case receives our highest priority, Tremblay explains during his first press conference 36 hours later. We deploy every available resource, follow every possible lead, and continue searching until we find answers. Lily and Jack Sullivan deserve nothing less than our complete commitment. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team operates under protocols developed through decades of experience with missing persons cases. Within 2 hours of the initial call, specialized units from across the province begin mobilizing resources that will transform Stellarton into the center of a massive search operation. The initial response protocol follows a structured approach designed to maximize the chances of finding missing children during the critical first 72 hours. Risk assessment procedures evaluate factors including weather conditions, terrain challenges, potential family dynamics, and the possibility of stranger involvement. The Sullivan case immediately receives the highest priority classification due to the children's ages and the circumstances of their disappearance. Sunday morning at 6 a.m., the Royal Canadian Mounted Police establishes a temporary command centre at the Stellarton Detachment, a modest building that suddenly becomes the nerve centre for an investigation spanning multiple provinces. Communication equipment, computer terminals, and mapping systems fill every available space as investigators begin coordinating the most complex search operation in the region's recent history. The human resources deployed for Operation Find Them include 47 officers from various specialties, 12 civilian specialists with expertise in child psychology and family dynamics, and 8 civilian analysts trained in data processing and evidence correlation. This team represents the largest concentration of investigative talent ever assembled for a single case in Pictou County. Sergeant Michelle Boudreau leads the ground search coordination, deploying teams across an expanding radius that initially covers 12 square kilometers around the Sullivan home. Search patterns follow established protocols that ensure systematic coverage of every possible location where children might hide, become lost, or be taken against their will. The technological arsenal brought to bear on the Sullivan case includes geographic information systems mapping that creates detailed three-dimensional models of the search area. Drone surveillance units equipped with thermal imaging cameras begin systematic flights over residential neighborhoods, wooded areas, and waterways where children might be found or where evidence might be discovered. K9 units arrive from Halifax and Truro, bringing specialized search dogs trained in different aspects of missing persons investigations. Scent tracking dogs work from clothing samples provided by the Sullivan family, following trails that lead from the children's bedrooms through the house and into the surrounding neighborhood. Cadaver dogs sweep areas where the worst-case scenario might have occurred, while drug detection dogs investigate the possibility that the disappearance might be connected to criminal activity. Digital forensic specialists begin analyzing cell phone data, social media activity, and traffic camera footage from the hours surrounding the children's disappearance. The Sullivan family's electronic devices receive thorough examination, along with social media accounts, email communications, and any digital footprints that might provide clues about what happened after the family returned home from the community celebration. The volunteer coordination effort connects official search teams with community members who insist on participating in the effort to find Lilly and Jack. More than 200 residents register to assist with organized search parties, providing local knowledge about terrain, abandoned buildings, and hiding places that might not be immediately obvious to investigators from outside the community. The tip line established specifically for the Sullivan case receives its first call at 7:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. By Wednesday evening, 488 separate tips have been logged, categorized, and assigned for investigation. The volume of community response demonstrates both the level of concern for the missing children and the challenge of separating credible information from well-intentioned speculation. Tips fall into several distinct categories that reflect the community's desperate desire to help find the children. Sightings of children matching Lilly and Jack's descriptions come from locations ranging from nearby Pictou to distant Halifax, requiring investigators to verify each report through detailed interviews and evidence collection. Vehicle descriptions provided by witnesses who noticed unusual activity near the Sullivan home demand immediate follow-up investigation. Theories about potential suspects emerge from community members who remember interactions with service providers, visitors, or strangers who might have observed the Sullivan family's routines. Background information about recent construction work, utility repairs, and delivery services in the neighborhood generates dozens of leads that require careful evaluation and investigation. False leads prove both inevitable and frustrating as investigators work to verify information provided by witnesses whose memories may be influenced by stress, media coverage, or the natural human tendency to find patterns in random events. A reported sighting of 2 children matching the Sullivan descriptions at a gas station in New Glasgow requires 8 officers and 6 hours to investigate thoroughly before being eliminated as a case of mistaken identity. The challenge of separating credible information from speculation becomes increasingly difficult as media coverage amplifies community anxiety and well-meaning witnesses begin reporting observations that may be influenced by their fears rather than their actual memories. Every tip receives thorough investigation, but the sheer volume of information threatens to overwhelm the analytical capacity of even the most experienced investigators. Corporal Tremblay addresses this challenge during his second press conference on Wednesday morning. "We are grateful for the community's overwhelming response and commitment to helping us find Lilly and Jack. Every tip receives careful evaluation, and we continue to follow leads that may bring us closer to answers. We ask for patience as we work through this information systematically." The investigation continues around the clock, with officers working 12-hour shifts and specialists remaining on call 24 hours per day. The commitment to finding the Sullivan children has mobilized resources that extend far beyond normal protocols, reflecting both the severity of the case and the determination of law enforcement to bring Lilly and Jack home safely. But as the hours turn into days, the nature of the investigation begins to shift from rescue operation to something far more complex and troubling. Sunday, May 3rd, 6 a.m. The first full day of the search for Lilly and Jack Sullivan begins with Corporal Guillaume Tremblay establishing operational priorities that will guide every decision made during the critical 72-hour window when missing children are most likely to be found alive. The search radius expands according to established protocols, that account for how far children of different ages might travel on foot under various circumstances. The initial 1-kilometer radius around the Sullivan home grows to 3 kilometers by noon, then 5 kilometers by evening, encompassing residential neighborhoods, commercial areas, wooded sections, and waterways that might attract curious children or conceal evidence. Constable Sarah McLeod receives assignment as Family Liaison Officer, a role that requires balancing investigative needs with the emotional support that families require during the most traumatic experience of their lives. McLeod, a 12-year veteran with specialized training in family crisis management, moves into the Sullivan home to provide continuous support while ensuring that investigators maintain access to any information that might emerge. "My job is to be the bridge between the family and the investigation," McLeod explains during a brief interview. "The Sullivans need to know that we are doing everything possible to find their children, and they need someone who can answer their questions and help them navigate this nightmare." The weather during the first 72 hours presents both advantages and challenges for the search operation. Temperatures ranging from 8 degrees Celsius at night to 21 degrees during the day create comfortable conditions for extended outdoor searches, but intermittent rain showers on Monday afternoon complicate efforts to preserve potential evidence and slow the progress of ground search teams. Media management becomes increasingly complex as news outlets from across the maritime provinces send reporters to cover the developing story. Corporal Tremblay holds press conferences at 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. each day, providing updates on search progress while carefully avoiding details that might compromise the investigation or provide information to anyone who might have taken the children. "We continue to follow all leads and search all possible locations where Lilly and Jack might be found," Tremblay states during Monday morning's press conference. "We ask the media and the public to respect the family's privacy during this difficult time, while continuing to provide any information that might help us locate these children." Community volunteer coordination requires constant attention, as more than 300 residents register to participate in organized search efforts. Volunteer teams receive specific assignments, safety briefings, and communication equipment to ensure their efforts complement rather than interfere with professional search operations. The forensic processing of the Sullivan home begins Sunday morning, with specialist teams collecting evidence that might indicate how the children left the house and whether their departure was voluntary or forced. Fingerprint analysis, DNA collection, and detailed photography document every surface, room, and potential exit point. Neighborhood canvassing produces interviews with 43 households within a 6-block radius of the Sullivan home. Investigators document every observation about unusual vehicles, unfamiliar people, or suspicious activity during the days leading up to the disappearance. The process reveals the typical rhythm of small-town life, but no obvious clues about what happened to Lilly and Jack. Interview protocols require detailed conversations with everyone who had contact with the Sullivan family in the weeks before the disappearance. Teachers, coaches, neighbors, service providers, and extended family members provide information about the children's behavior, family dynamics, and any concerns that might be relevant to the investigation. Background checks encompass all close contacts of the Sullivan family, including comprehensive reviews of criminal history, employment records, and previous interactions with law enforcement. The process requires coordination with multiple databases and agencies to ensure that no potential risk factors are overlooked. School records from Stellarton Elementary provide detailed information about Lilly's academic performance, social interactions, and any behavioral changes that might indicate problems at home or exposure to inappropriate influences. Medical records from the family's physician confirm that both children were healthy and showed no signs of abuse or neglect. The emotional toll on Marianne and David Sullivan becomes increasingly visible as the search enters its third day. Marianne's daily press appeals, delivered with trembling voice and tear-stained cheeks, demonstrate a mother's desperate love and growing fear that her children may never come home. "Please, if you have my babies, bring them back to me," Marianne pleads during Tuesday's press conference. "They are just little children who need their mommy and daddy. They need to come home where they belong." David's exhaustion manifests in his inability to sit still, his constant pacing through the house, and his growing frustration with the pace of the investigation. Sleep deprivation affects his judgment as he begins pursuing his own theories about what might have happened, sometimes interfering with official search efforts. Community vigils and prayer services provide emotional support for residents struggling to comprehend how children could disappear from their safe neighborhood. The United Church Sanctuary fills beyond capacity each evening as families gather to pray for Lilly and Jack's safe return and offer support to the Sullivan family. Media pressure intensifies as national news outlets pick up the story, bringing reporters and camera crews to Stellarton's quiet streets. The constant presence of journalists creates additional stress for the Sullivan family while generating tips and information from across the country. By Wednesday evening, 72 hours after Lilly and Jack Sullivan were last seen, the nature of the investigation begins to shift. The critical window for finding missing children alive has passed, and investigators must confront the possibility that this case involves more than children who wandered away from home. The search continues, but hope is beginning to transform into something much darker and more complex. Thursday, May 6, 2025. Day 4 of the search for Lilly and Jack Sullivan begins with what appears to be routine forensic processing, but will end with a discovery that transforms the entire investigation from a missing persons case into something far more complex and disturbing. At 9:43 a.m., forensic specialist Constable Jennifer Walsh conducts her systematic inspection of the Sullivan property's drainage systems, a standard procedure designed to identify any evidence that might have been washed away during the initial chaos of the disappearance. Her examination of the basement floor drain, located directly beneath the laundry room where Marianne Sullivan had been folding clothes on Saturday evening, reveals traces of an unusual residue. "I noticed immediately that this was not typical household cleaning residue," Walsh later explains in her detailed report. "The consistency and color were different from anything you would expect to find in a residential drain system." The sample collection process follows strict protocols established for potential evidence in criminal investigations. Walsh uses specialized containers and preservation techniques to ensure that laboratory analysis will provide accurate and legally admissible results. The samples are immediately transported to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Forensic Laboratory in Halifax under chain of custody procedures that document every person who handles the evidence. Corporal Sandy Matharu receives the samples at 11:30 a.m. and begins the identification process that will reveal their significance. With 15 years of experience in forensic chemistry and specialized training in trace evidence analysis, Matharu has developed expertise in identifying unusual compounds that might be connected to criminal activity. "When I first examined these samples under microscopic analysis, I knew we were dealing with something that did not belong in a residential setting," Matharu explains during a later interview. The chemical signature indicated an industrial-grade compound that requires specialized knowledge to obtain and use safely. The initial chemical analysis reveals the presence of tetrachloroethylene, a powerful solvent commonly used in industrial cleaning applications but rarely found in residential environments. This compound, also known as perchloroethylene, possesses properties that make it effective for removing organic stains and residues, but also dangerous enough to require professional handling and disposal. Laboratory testing confirms that the concentration of tetrachloroethylene found in the Sullivan basement drain exceeds levels that would result from any legitimate household cleaning activity. The compound's presence indicates recent use of industrial-grade cleaning equipment or chemicals, suggesting that someone with specialized knowledge had been in the Sullivan home within hours of the children's disappearance. The chemical compound's properties include high volatility, which means it evaporates quickly and leaves minimal residue under normal circumstances. The fact that detectable quantities remained in the drain system indicates that large amounts were used recently and that whoever used them may not have allowed sufficient time for complete evaporation. Tetrachloroethylene's typical uses include dry cleaning operations, metal degreasing in manufacturing facilities, and specialized cleaning applications in medical or research environments. The compound is not available through normal retail channels and requires specific licensing and training to purchase legally. Purchase tracking methodology begins immediately as investigators work to identify every business, institution, and individual in the maritime provinces who has legitimate access to industrial-grade tetrachloroethylene. The process involves contacting chemical suppliers, dry cleaning businesses, manufacturing facilities, and research institutions to determine who has purchased or received shipments of the compound in recent months. Distribution network analysis reveals that only 12 businesses in Nova Scotia maintain current licenses to purchase and use tetrachloroethylene in significant quantities. Each business receives immediate contact from investigators seeking records of recent purchases, employee background information, and any connections to the Stellarton area. The contrast between industrial applications and household cleaning becomes crucial to understanding why this compound's presence is so significant. Normal household cleaning products, even the strongest commercial varieties available to consumers, do not contain tetrachloroethylene due to its toxicity and regulatory restrictions. Finding this compound in a residential drain is like finding aviation fuel in someone's car, Matharu explains. It does not belong there, it is not something that happens by accident, and its presence indicates deliberate use by someone with specialized knowledge. Thursday afternoon at 3:15 p.m. represents the pivot moment when the Sullivan case officially transitions from missing persons to potential homicide. The chemical evidence suggests that someone attempted to clean up evidence of a crime using professional-grade materials designed to eliminate organic traces that might be detected through standard forensic analysis. Additional resources receive immediate authorization as the investigation expands to include homicide specialists, additional forensic personnel, and expanded surveillance capabilities. The scope of the search grows beyond the immediate area around Stellarton to include locations where someone with access to industrial cleaning compounds might dispose of evidence. Federal involvement discussions begin as investigators consider the possibility that the Sullivan case might be connected to organized criminal activity that crosses provincial boundaries. The specialized knowledge required to obtain and use tetrachloroethylene suggests involvement by someone with professional training or criminal experience. Family notification about the discovery presents investigators with the challenging task of informing Marianne and David Sullivan that their children's disappearance may involve homicide without destroying the hope that keeps them functioning during the most difficult period of their lives. Constable McLeod delivers the news during a private meeting at 4:30 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. We have discovered evidence that suggests someone with specialized knowledge was in your home around the time Lilly and Jack disappeared, she explains carefully. This means we are expanding our investigation to include additional possibilities. The Sullivan family's reaction combines relief that investigators have found concrete evidence with growing fear about what that evidence might mean for their children's safety. David Sullivan's immediate question reflects every parent's worst nightmare. Does this mean someone hurt our babies? This is where the investigation took a turn that nobody saw coming. Before we continue, what is your theory about what really happened? Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment. The chemical trace discovery marks the beginning of a new phase in the investigation, one that will eventually reveal connections to a criminal network operating in plain sight within the community that trusted them most. Friday, May 7th marks the beginning of the digital detective work that will ultimately expose the truth behind Lilly and Jack Sullivan's disappearance. Investigator Constable Derek Morrison begins the painstaking process of reconstructing a timeline using security footage collected from businesses, traffic cameras, and residential surveillance systems throughout Stellarton and the surrounding area. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. Morrison's systematic review of footage from Henderson's convenience store on Main Street reveals a crucial detail that had been overlooked during the initial canvass. At 4:47 p.m. on Friday, May 1st, just 24 hours before the Sullivan family attended their final community celebration, security cameras captured a figure in work clothes purchasing cleaning supplies. The individual appears to be wearing the standard uniform of a local service provider, dark work pants, a company shirt, and steel-toed boots that suggest legitimate employment in construction or maintenance. However, something about his behavior catches Morrison's attention during repeated viewings of the footage. Most people buying cleaning supplies grab what they need and head to the checkout. Morrison explains during his analysis. This individual spent 12 minutes examining different products, reading labels carefully, and making selections that seemed unusually deliberate for routine maintenance purchases. The security footage shows the purchase of several items including heavy-duty garbage bags, rubber gloves, and industrial disinfectant, a combination that might be routine for professional cleaning but unusual for typical maintenance work. The individual pays with cash and avoids making eye contact with the clerk or other customers, behavior that seems inconsistent with someone conducting normal business in a community where most people know each other. License plate enhancement technology reveals partial numbers and letters from the vehicle parked outside the convenience store during the suspicious purchase. The enhancement process, conducted by specialized technicians in Halifax, uses digital analysis to clarify images that initially appeared too blurry to provide useful information. The partial plate information leads to vehicle registration records that identify a 2018 Ford F-150 pickup truck registered to a local contracting business. Cross-referencing with business licensing records reveals the identity of a contractor who has operated in the Stellarton area for 15 years, building a reputation that made him trusted by families throughout the community. For legal reasons, we cannot identify this individual by name while criminal proceedings are pending. However, the background investigation into his history reveals a carefully constructed public persona that allowed him to operate without suspicion while gaining access to homes throughout the region. The contractor's business, established in 2010, specialized in home renovations, plumbing repairs, and general maintenance services. His client list included more than 200 families across Pictou County, many of whom provided testimonials praising his reliability, fair pricing, and trustworthy character. "He was the kind of person you could trust with your house keys," explains one former client who requested anonymity. "He did beautiful work, always cleaned up after himself, and never made you feel like you needed to watch over his shoulder. My kids talked to him like he was their favorite uncle." Previous client testimonials paint a consistent picture of someone who went out of his way to build personal relationships with the families he served. He remembered children's names, asked about school activities, and often volunteered for community projects that enhanced his reputation as a caring neighbor who wanted to make Stellarton a better place for everyone. His community involvement included volunteering for the annual Christmas parade, helping to build code playground equipment at local schools, and participating in fundraising events for families facing medical emergencies or financial hardship. These activities provided him with extensive knowledge about family routines, home layouts, and the trust levels that made certain households vulnerable to exploitation. The mask of normalcy he maintained was so convincing that several families had given him copies of their house keys for emergency repairs, and many parents felt comfortable leaving him alone in their homes with their children present. This level of trust, built over years of consistent behavior, provided unprecedented access to potential victims. Pattern recognition analysis begins when investigators cross-reference the chemical evidence from the Sullivan case, with similar compounds found at crime scenes throughout the maritime provinces during the past 6 years. The results reveal connections that transform an isolated missing persons case into evidence of a much larger criminal operation. In 2019, a missing person case in Truro involved the disappearance of 8-year-old Michael Chen, whose family had recently hired a contractor for basement renovations. Chemical traces found in the family's laundry room included residues consistent with industrial cleaning compounds, but the significance was not recognized at the time due to limited forensic analysis. The 2021 Halifax break-in investigation documented unexplained cleaning residue in a home where valuable items were stolen but no clear point of entry could be determined. The investigating officers noted that someone had used professional-grade cleaning products to eliminate fingerprints and other evidence, suggesting knowledge and equipment beyond typical criminal capabilities. A 2023 child endangerment investigation in Dartmouth revealed that a local contractor had been accessing homes inappropriately, using his legitimate business as cover for predatory behavior. Although charges were filed in that case, the individual relocated to another community before prosecution could be completed. Geographic clustering analysis reveals that all 4 cases occurred within a 200-kilometer radius and involved contractors who used similar methods to gain access to family homes. The pattern suggests either a single individual operating across multiple communities or a network of criminals sharing techniques and resources. The web of deception that allowed this criminal activity to continue undetected relied on the contractor's ability to maintain legitimate business relationships that provided perfect cover for his illegal activities. Client relationships that spanned years created alibis and character references that deflected suspicion when unusual incidents occurred. His participation in community events where he volunteered alongside other respected residents reinforced his reputation as someone who could be trusted completely. Parents who saw him helping at school functions or community fundraisers never questioned his motivations or considered that his helpfulness might mask predatory intentions. The psychology of hiding in plain sight involves understanding how communities evaluate trustworthiness and exploiting those assumptions to avoid detection. By consistently meeting community expectations for helpful behavior, he created a protective reputation that made accusations seem impossible and investigations unlikely. This careful construction of public trust would soon be shattered by evidence that investigators were only beginning to piece together. Monday, May 10, 2025. The investigation into the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan enters a new phase, as forensic evidence begins revealing connections that extend far beyond a single contractor operating in isolation. What investigators discover during the next 72 hours will expose a criminal network that has been exploiting maritime communities for years. Purchase record analysis spanning 3 years reveals a pattern of chemical acquisitions that correlates directly with unsolved cases across Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Detective Inspector Maria Santos leads the team responsible for tracking every transaction involving tetrachloroethylene and related industrial cleaning compounds throughout the region. The analysis begins with the contractor's business records, which show purchases of cleaning supplies that far exceed what would be required for legitimate construction and renovation work. Monthly orders of industrial solvents, heavy-duty disinfectants, and specialized equipment suggest activities that go well beyond routine maintenance services. When we calculated the volume of chemicals purchased versus the number of legitimate jobs completed, the numbers did not add up, Santos explains during a briefing with senior investigators. He was acquiring enough industrial cleaning compounds to service 20 times the number of clients on his official books. Supplier interviews reveal additional concerning details about the contractor's purchasing patterns. Representatives from Maritime Chemical Supply report that he consistently paid in cash for orders that legitimate businesses typically purchase through established credit accounts. His requests for expedited delivery often occurred on short notice, suggesting urgent need rather than planned maintenance schedules. Shipping manifests document deliveries to multiple addresses beyond the contractor's registered business location. Several shipments were sent to storage facilities rented under different names, creating a network of supply points that provided access to cleaning materials across a wide geographic area. Chemical batch tracking through the supply chain connects specific compounds found at the Sullivan home to purchases made 18 days before the children's disappearance. The batch numbers match exactly, proving that the contractor obtained the materials used to clean up evidence at the crime scene. Timeline correlation with missing person cases reveals that chemical purchases consistently preceded unexplained disappearances or unusual criminal activity in communities where the contractor had worked. The pattern spans 6 years and includes 12 cases where similar compounds were found at crime scenes or family homes. The network revelation emerges through surveillance footage from storage facilities, meeting locations, and financial institutions where the contractor conducted business with individuals whose backgrounds raise immediate red flags. Phone records obtained through judicial warrants reveal communication patterns that suggest coordination between multiple criminals operating across provincial boundaries. Detective Santos discovers that the contractor maintained regular contact with 3 individuals who have extensive criminal histories including fraud, theft, and violent offenses. Phone calls between these individuals increased significantly in the weeks leading up to each documented incident, suggesting advanced planning and coordination. Meeting locations identified through surveillance include a warehouse in Dartmouth that serves as a distribution point for stolen goods, a storage facility in Truro where vehicles and equipment are modified for criminal purposes, and a residence in Halifax where financial transactions are conducted outside traditional banking systems. Phone records reveal suspicious contact patterns that follow a consistent schedule. Calls typically occur late at night or early morning, last for brief periods suggesting coded communications, and often precede travel to communities where criminal activity subsequently occurs. Financial transactions raising red flags include cash deposits that exceed normal business income, money transfers to offshore accounts, and purchases of equipment and supplies that serve no legitimate business purpose. Bank records show a pattern of financial activity designed to avoid detection while supporting extensive criminal operations. Criminal profiling of the contractor reveals a sophisticated individual who understands community psychology and exploits trust-building behaviors to gain access to potential victims. Dr. Rebecca Hamilton, a specialist in criminal behavioral analysis, contributes expertise that helps investigators understand how the contractor maintained his cover for so many years. This individual demonstrates classic characteristics of an organized predator who uses legitimate business activities as a cover for criminal behavior, Dr. Hamilton explains. His ability to maintain separate public and private personas indicates significant planning and psychological sophistication. Behavioral analysis of his public versus private persona reveals careful attention to community expectations and social norms that provided perfect camouflage for illegal activities. His volunteer work, client relationships, and community involvement were calculated to build the trust necessary for accessing family homes and identifying vulnerable targets. The victimology study examining why Lilly and Jack were targeted reveals that the contractor had observed the Sullivan family for months, learning their routines and identifying the perfect opportunity to strike. His legitimate work in the neighborhood provided multiple chances to assess family dynamics and security measures. Opportunity window analysis shows that the contractor knew the Sullivan family would be at the community celebration on Saturday evening, providing him with advanced knowledge about when the house would be empty and when the family would return. This level of planning indicates premeditation rather than a crime of opportunity. Building the case requires careful coordination between multiple agencies and jurisdictions as investigators work to preserve evidence while preparing for arrests that could disrupt a criminal network operating across several provinces. Crown prosecutors begin developing legal strategies that will ensure successful prosecution of all individuals involved in the conspiracy. Evidence preservation protocols become crucial as the investigation expands to include multiple crime scenes, storage locations, and financial records. Each piece of evidence must be collected and documented according to standards that will withstand challenges during criminal proceedings. Witness protection considerations arise as investigators realize that several individuals who provided information about the contractor's activities may face retaliation from other network members. Protocols are established to ensure witness safety while maintaining their availability for testimony during future trials. Preparing for arrest and interrogation involves developing strategies that maximize the chances of obtaining confessions and additional information about network operations. Investigators study the contractor's personality profile to determine which approaches are most likely to succeed during questioning. The breakthrough represents a turning point where months of investigation begin yielding concrete results that will soon bring justice for Lilly and Jack Sullivan while exposing a criminal conspiracy that has victimized families throughout the maritime provinces. Sunday, June 15, 2025, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The Stellarton Recreation Center, the same building where the Sullivan family attended their final community celebration just 6 weeks earlier, transforms into the setting for one of the most devastating press conferences in maritime history. Representatives from news organizations across Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island fill every available seat in the main hall. Television cameras from CBC, CTV, and Global News position themselves to capture every detail of the announcement that will forever change how the region understands safety and trust in small communities. Marianne and David Sullivan sit in the front row, flanked by family members who have provided support throughout the investigation. Their faces show the exhaustion and emotional trauma of 44 days spent hoping for news about their children, while fearing what that news might reveal. Community leaders, including Mayor Patricia Williams, Stellarton Town Council members, and representatives from local churches occupy reserved seating near the Sullivan family. Their presence reflects the entire community's investment in learning the truth about what happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan. Corporal Guillaume Tremblay approaches the podium at precisely 2 o'clock, carrying a folder containing evidence that will destroy the illusion of safety that has protected Stellarton for generations. His expression reflects the gravity of information that no parent should ever have to hear and no community should ever have to confront. "Thank you for your patience during this extensive investigation," Tremblay begins, his voice steady despite the weight of what he must reveal. "Today, I can provide you with answers about the disappearance of 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan. However, these answers will be difficult to hear and even more difficult to accept." The room falls into absolute silence as 200 people prepare to learn what happened to the children who have dominated their thoughts and prayers for more than 6 weeks. The only sound comes from camera shutters capturing a moment that will be remembered as the day Stellarton lost its innocence forever. "Our investigation has determined that Lilly and Jack Sullivan were taken from their home by someone they knew and trusted," Tremblay continues. "That individual is a local contractor who used his legitimate business relationships to gain access to family homes throughout our region. We have issued an arrest warrant for this individual, who is currently in custody." Audible gasps echo through the recreation center as community members struggle to process the revelation that someone they trusted could be responsible for the disappearance of 2 innocent children. Several people in the audience begin crying as the full implications of the announcement become clear. The evidence collected during our investigation indicates that this individual used specialized industrial cleaning agents to destroy evidence of his crimes. Chemical traces found at the Sullivan home match compounds that he purchased through his contracting business, establishing a direct connection between his activities and the children's disappearance. Marianne Sullivan's composure, maintained through weeks of public appeals and private anguish, finally collapses as she realizes that someone she welcomed into her home, someone her children knew and trusted, was responsible for destroying her family. Her breakdown, captured by news cameras, becomes the image that will define this tragedy for years to come. David Sullivan attempts to comfort his wife while struggling with his own grief and rage. The realization that he hired this individual to work on their home, that he inadvertently provided access to the person who would harm their children, adds another layer of trauma to an already unbearable situation. This investigation has revealed that the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan was not an isolated incident, Tremblay announces, delivering information that shocks even experienced investigators. We have identified connections to similar crimes spanning multiple provinces and involving a network of individuals who exploited their legitimate business relationships to commit serious criminal offenses. Mayor Williams speaks immediately after the press conference, her voice shaking with emotion and anger. This community trusted this individual with our homes, our families, and our children. The betrayal we feel today goes beyond anything we ever imagined possible. We will not rest until everyone involved in this criminal network faces justice. The media frenzy that follows the announcement spreads the story across Canada within hours. News outlets struggle to explain how a criminal network could operate undetected for years in communities that prided themselves on knowing everyone and watching out for each other. The broader implications of the investigation extend far beyond Stellarton, as law enforcement agencies realize they are dealing with a sophisticated criminal enterprise that has exploited small-town trust to victimize families across the maritime provinces. The revelation forces communities throughout the region to re-evaluate their assumptions about safety and the people they allow into their homes. Federal involvement becomes necessary as investigators uncover evidence that the criminal network operated across provincial boundaries and may have connections to similar operations in other parts of Canada. A joint task force including the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, provincial police forces, and federal agencies receives authorization to pursue all aspects of the conspiracy. Public safety measures announced during the press conference include enhanced background check requirements for all service providers, improved coordination between law enforcement agencies, and educational programs designed to help families recognize potential threats to their safety. The legal proceedings begin immediately with arrest warrants issued for the primary suspect and 3 associates identified through the investigation. Search warrants authorize the examination of multiple properties, storage facilities, and business locations where evidence of criminal activity may be found. Asset seizure orders freeze bank accounts, business assets, and personal property belonging to all individuals connected to the criminal network. The seizures are designed to prevent the destruction of evidence and ensure that victims can recover damages through civil proceedings. Witness testimony collection becomes a priority as investigators work to build cases against all network members while ensuring that victims and witnesses receive protection from potential retaliation. More than 40 individuals have provided statements that will be crucial to successful prosecutions. Today marks the beginning of justice for Lilly and Jack Sullivan, Tremblay concludes. While we cannot bring these children back to their family, we can ensure that those responsible face the full consequences of their actions and that other families are protected from similar tragedies. The press conference ends, but the impact of the revelations will continue to reshape how maritime communities understand trust, safety, and the responsibility to protect the most vulnerable members of society. The weeks following the press conference transformed Stellarton into a community forced to confront the most fundamental questions about trust, safety, and the assumptions that govern small-town life. Residents who once prided themselves on knowing everyone now struggle to understand how they could have been so completely deceived by someone they welcomed into their homes. The psychological impact assessment conducted by provincial mental health professionals reveals trauma that extends far beyond the Sullivan family to encompass virtually every household in Stellarton. Dr. Patricia Chen, a specialist in community trauma response, arrives from Halifax to help residents process the collective shock of learning that a trusted neighbor was capable of such devastating betrayal. The destruction of trust in a small community creates a unique form of trauma, Dr. Chen explains during her initial assessment. When everyone knows everyone else, the revelation that a respected community member committed such crimes forces people to question their ability to judge character and protect their families. The phrase "how could we not know" becomes a constant refrain in conversations throughout Stellarton as residents replay their interactions with the contractor, searching for warning signs they might have missed. Parents who hired him for home repairs, neighbors who chatted with him at community events, and children who knew him as a friendly face all struggle with feelings of guilt and betrayal. Children's safety protocols undergo immediate and dramatic changes as parents implement security measures that would have seemed unnecessary just weeks earlier. Families who once allowed their children to play outside unsupervised now require constant adult supervision. Background checks become mandatory for anyone providing services to homes where children live. Community meetings held at the United Church draw standing room-only crowds as residents seek information, support, and reassurance from local leaders and law enforcement officials. The sessions, facilitated by trained counselors, provide opportunities for people to express their fears, share their concerns, and work together towards solutions that will help the community heal. The ripple effects of the investigation extend throughout the regional economy, as other contractors and service providers face increased scrutiny and suspicion from potential clients. Legitimate businesses struggle to rebuild trust with customers who now question everyone who requests access to their homes. Robert McKay, owner of McKay Plumbing Services, describes the challenge during an interview at his Main Street office. Families who have known me for 20 years are now asking for references and background checks before they will let me fix their kitchen sink. I understand their concern, but it breaks my heart that we have reached this point. Background check requirements for all service providers become standard practice as homeowners demand verification of criminal history, business licensing, and professional credentials before allowing anyone into their homes. The Stellarton Town Council passes emergency measures requiring enhanced screening for anyone conducting business in residential areas. Neighborhood watch programs experience unprecedented participation, as residents organize systematic monitoring of their streets and immediate reporting of any suspicious activity. The program, previously maintained by a handful of dedicated volunteers, now includes representatives from every street in town. School safety measures receive comprehensive review and enhancement, as parents and educators work together to ensure that children remain protected, while maintaining the open, welcoming environment that defines education in small communities. Enhanced visitor screening procedures and improved communication protocols become standard practice. Jennifer Walsh, a teacher at Stellarton Elementary School, speaks anonymously about the challenges educators now face. We want children to trust adults and feel safe in their community, but we also need to teach them to be cautious in ways that do not create fear or paranoia. Finding that balance has become one of our greatest challenges. Anonymous interviews with neighbors reveal the depth of trauma experienced by families who had direct contact with the contractor. One mother, whose identity must be protected for legal reasons, describes her ongoing struggle with guilt and fear. He fixed our back steps last summer, and my daughter talked to him about her school project while he worked. Every night I wonder what might have happened if circumstances had been different. I cannot stop thinking about how close we came to experiencing what the Sullivans are going through. Local business owners express frustration with the economic impact of the investigation, while acknowledging the necessity of enhanced security measures. Sarah Thompson, who manages Henderson's convenience store, notes changes in customer behavior and community atmosphere. People are more suspicious, more careful about who they talk to and what information they share. The friendly openness that made this town special has been replaced by caution that feels necessary but heartbreaking. Elderly residents report feeling particularly vulnerable as they realize their willingness to trust service providers may have exposed them to exploitation. Support groups specifically for senior citizens provide education about safety measures and emotional support for those struggling with fears about their security. The memorial and remembrance efforts begin with the establishment of Lilly and Jack Memorial Park on a piece of municipal land adjacent to Stellarton Elementary School. The park features code playground equipment designed according to the children's interests and dreams, creating a space where their memory can inspire joy rather than only sadness. An annual Safety Awareness Day, held each May 2nd to mark the anniversary of the children's disappearance, brings together families, law enforcement, and community organizations to share information about recognizing predatory behavior and protecting vulnerable community members. The community fund established for victim families provides financial support for counseling, legal expenses, and other costs associated with recovering from criminal victimization. The fund also supports educational programs that help other communities learn from Stellarton's experience. Educational programs about recognizing predatory behavior become mandatory components of school curricula and community programming as residents work to ensure that future generations possess the knowledge necessary to protect themselves and others from exploitation. The disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how predators operate within our communities and the vulnerabilities that exist even in places where we feel most secure. This case provides crucial insights that extend far beyond Stellarton, offering lessons that every parent, neighbor, and community leader must understand. Community vigilance requires more than simply watching for obvious threats. The contractor's ability to operate undetected for years demonstrates how sophisticated predators exploit our assumptions about trustworthiness and respectability. His participation in community events, his reliable work ethic, and his friendly demeanor created a protective shield that deflected suspicion even when warning signs appeared. The importance of trusting instincts emerges as one of the most critical lessons from this investigation. Several parents interviewed after the arrest admitted to feeling uncomfortable during interactions with the contractor, but dismissed their concerns because his reputation seemed to contradict their gut feelings. One mother describes ignoring her unease when he asked detailed questions about her family's daily routine while completing routine maintenance work. Something felt off about the way he lingered after finishing the job, asking about when my husband worked late and which nights the kids had activities, she explains. But he had such good references, and everyone spoke so highly of him. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Red flags that were missed in hindsight include the contractor's excessive interest in family schedules, his preference for cash payments that avoided creating financial records, and his tendency to work alone even on projects that typically require assistance. His requests to use client bathrooms and his knowledge of home layouts beyond the areas where he worked should have raised concerns. How predators exploit trust and familiarity becomes clear through analysis of the contractor's methods. He deliberately built relationships over extended periods, completing small jobs successfully to establish credibility before targeting families for more serious crimes. His understanding of community psychology allowed him to position himself as someone who belonged, someone who could be trusted completely. Systemic changes needed to prevent similar tragedies begin with comprehensive improvements to background check procedures for anyone providing services in residential settings. Current systems focus primarily on criminal convictions, while failing to identify individuals who may pose risks but have not been previously caught. Enhanced background checks must include psychological evaluations for positions requiring access to family homes, verification of all previous employment and client references, and regular monitoring of individuals who work independently in residential settings. The checks should also include financial audits to identify suspicious income sources or spending patterns that might indicate criminal activity. Interagency communication protocols require dramatic improvement to ensure that information about suspicious individuals or concerning patterns is shared effectively between jurisdictions. The contractor's ability to operate across multiple communities was facilitated by the lack of coordination between police departments and regulatory agencies. Community education about grooming behaviors must become a standard component of school programming and community outreach efforts. Parents need to understand how predators establish trust, recognize warning signs of inappropriate interest in children, and respond effectively when concerns arise. Technology solutions for child safety include enhanced home security systems that provide real-time monitoring capabilities, improved communication devices that allow children to summon help instantly, and database systems that track individuals who provide services in residential areas. The Sullivan legacy extends far beyond their tragic loss to encompass policy changes that will protect other families from similar experiences. Their story has inspired legislative improvements to background check requirements, enhanced training for law enforcement investigators, and increased funding for community safety programs. Other families inspired to speak out include victims of similar crimes who previously remained silent due to shame, fear, or lack of support. The publicity surrounding the Sullivan case has encouraged more than 30 families across the maritime provinces to report suspicious incidents or seek help for trauma they experienced but never addressed. Investigators throughout Canada now use this case as a training example for recognizing patterns of predatory behavior that might otherwise be overlooked. The techniques developed during the investigation provide a model for other jurisdictions dealing with similar crimes. Law enforcement agencies study the communication methods, evidence collection procedures, and community engagement strategies that led to solving this case. The investigation's success provides hope for other families whose children have disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Lilly and Jack's story is not just about one family's tragedy, it is about how we can all be better protectors of the innocent. If this documentary has opened your eyes to the importance of community awareness, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Their memory demands that we remain vigilant, trust our instincts, and never allow politeness or social conventions to override our responsibility to protect the most vulnerable members of our communities. The shadows where predators hide can only be illuminated by the collective awareness and courage of communities committed to safeguarding their children. As we conclude this investigation into the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, the legal proceedings continue to unfold across multiple jurisdictions. The primary suspect remains in custody awaiting trial, while investigators pursue additional charges related to the broader criminal network that exploited communities throughout the maritime provinces. The ongoing investigation has expanded to include federal agencies as evidence emerges of similar operations in other parts of Canada. More than 20 cases across 6 provinces show patterns consistent with the methods used in Stellarton, suggesting that this criminal network may have been active for more than a decade. Stellarton continues its difficult journey toward healing while maintaining the vigilance necessary to prevent future tragedies. The community has implemented comprehensive safety protocols and support systems that serve as a model for other small towns facing similar challenges. Residents have learned to balance trust with caution, maintaining the neighborly spirit that defines their town while protecting their most vulnerable members. The Sullivan family's fight for justice extends beyond their personal tragedy to encompass advocacy for all families affected by similar crimes. Marianne and David Sullivan have established the Lilly and Jack Foundation, which provides resources for victim families and supports legislative efforts to improve child protection measures. This case represents part of a troubling pattern of crimes occurring across Canada, where predators exploit the trust inherent in small communities to access potential victims. Law enforcement agencies estimate that dozens of similar networks may be operating undetected, using legitimate businesses as cover for criminal activity. Viewers can protect their communities by implementing enhanced background checks for service providers, trusting their instincts when interactions feel inappropriate, and reporting suspicious behavior to local authorities immediately. Resources for reporting concerns include provincial tip lines, local police departments, and online reporting systems designed to protect anonymity while encouraging community participation. Supporting families affected by similar tragedies requires understanding that recovery involves years of counseling, legal proceedings, and community support. Organizations like the Canadian Centre for Child Protection provide resources that help communities respond effectively when these crimes occur. Lilly and Jack Sullivan are remembered today through the Code Playground built in their honor at Stellarton Elementary School, where children play on equipment designed to reflect the dreams and interests that were stolen from 2 innocent souls. Their photographs, displayed in the school's main hallway, show bright smiles and sparkling eyes that captured the joy they brought to everyone who knew them. The annual scholarship fund established in their names provides educational opportunities for local children while ensuring that their memory continues to inspire positive change. Each recipient learns about Lilly and Jack's story and commits to promoting safety awareness in their own communities. Before you go, help us continue this important work by subscribing to Criminal Mind Cortex for more deep-dive investigations into cases that demand attention. Comment below with your thoughts about this case, and share your theories about how communities can better protect their children. Share this documentary to spread awareness about the warning signs that might prevent similar tragedies. Support victim advocacy organizations that provide crucial resources for families facing unimaginable loss. Most importantly, stay vigilant in your own community. Trust your instincts. Protect the innocent. We tell these stories not to create fear, but to create awareness, because in the shadows of our safest communities, evil can hide behind the most familiar faces. But when we stand together, when we stay vigilant, when we refuse to let tragedy be forgotten, that is when we honor victims like Lilly and Jack Sullivan. That is when we ensure their story saves other lives.